Right.
So good evening all, it's Wednesday, the 20th of December, and this is the Airport Commission meeting. Welcome all of you on Zoom and all of us who are here local. Let's start with call to order, the Pledge of Allegiance. And I wonder if Robert would do us the honor and lead the pledge, please. I will. I pledge allegiance to the flag and the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, Robert. Has the agenda been posted?
Yes, the agenda has been posted.
We do a roll call.
Please unmute your mics on Zoom at this time, please, commissioners. Commissioner Banks,
Here.
Behrman,
Here.
Burke,
Present.
Caldwell,
Here.
Corcoran,
Here.
Dada is on his way, Delgado.
Here.
Oh, Dada's here, thank you.
Oh, good. Welcome. Welcome.
Delgado. Feltman.
Here.
Fong,
Present.
Hughes,
Present.
Martin, Michaelis,
Here.
Park, here, Pye,
Here.
Suero, Wise,
Here.
Wiseman,
Present.
Young.
Here.
Thank you, we have a quorum.
Chairman Dada, do you want me to run with it or do you want to take over from here?
Please run it. I can see how you perform. So,
Thank you, Otto. Do any changes need to be made to the agenda?
none.
So motion to accept, please, the agenda. So move second.
Second.
Got it. Thank you.
We'll take a roll call vote now, please. It's yes, no, or abstain. Banks,
Yes.
Behrman,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Corcoran,
Yes.
Dada,
Yes.
Feltman,
Yes.
Fong,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
Michaelis, Park, yes, Pye,
Yes.
Wise,
Yes.
Wiseman,
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Christina, this is Tracy Martin. You didn't call my name, but I'm here as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. All right, Christina, do we have any public comments tonight?
We have no public comment scheduled for this evening. Do we have anyone in the public who wishes to speak here? None here in the room. Anyone on Zoom, if you wish to speak in public comments this evening, please raise your virtual hand at this time. And we have no public comments this evening.
Okay. See, having none, let's move on to the approval of minutes for July 19th.
I do have one correction. On item 8E, under my introduction, I'd like to note that I've worked for the tribe for 21 years. I was 21 when I started working.
My apologies.
That's my only correction.
I'll make that correction. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, can I have a motion to approve, please?
I move motion
A second?
Second.
Second, Margaret, thank you.
as revised.
Christina?
Roll call vote. Commissioner Banks,
Yes.
Behrman,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Corcoran,
Yes.
Dada,
Yes.
Feltman,
Same.
Fong,
Aye.
Hughes,
Yes.
Martin,
Abstain?
Michaelis,
Yes.
Park,
Yes.
Pye,
Yes.
Suero, Wise,
Yes.
Wiseman,
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We've got a big agenda today, but tonight with some exciting decisions and recommendations we're gonna make. So let's just jump right into it. Let's go to 7A. We're gonna start with a follow-up on our strategic planning session update.
And commissioners, we've had a request that, when you speak or make a comment or, ask a question, that if you can please announce, your name, before you even begin to speak so that the public can know who's speaking on Zoom. Thank you.
Very interesting. Who's leading this piece?
Only Victoria's office.
Victoria?
Okay. Give me 1 second on my screen.
We have these in our packet, correct, Victoria?
That's correct.
All right, so follow-up to strategic planning. This piece, if you all, those of you are live, if you go to this, you can follow along if you can't see what's on the screen. Go ahead, Victoria.
All right, so at the last commission meeting that we had earlier this month, there were quite a few questions that I didn't have the answers to. So I went back through and listened to the commission meeting and hopefully got all of the questions taken down and then put together into some presentations. And one of the biggest things was the airport comparisons. We had discussed the cost of in-plane passengers, so the CPE comparable to other airports. I want to say the landing fees was also something that was of discussion in comparing to other airports, as well as the, what was the other item? I threw in the in-plane passengers because I wanted you to see what other airports had and how I selected those airports. And then I even put in our operation. So there's going to be a few slides on that, and I'm just kind of going to go through that. So I do want to point out, and you may have heard this more than once with being in the airport industry, is that when you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport, because they're all different, right? I mean, even though it could seem like it's apples to apples, like we could compare ourselves to Long Beach because they have the open concept, but maybe, as you're going to see later, their CPE is over $11 per in-plane passenger versus our CPE is $6.68. So I tried to find airports that had a comparable enplanements. So that kind of can give us an idea of what other airports are doing comparing to our airport to their airport. So this data is actually available on the Federal Aviation Administration Certification Activity Tracking Form 127. It has all airports in the United States. So you can find so much information, even including on PSP, where we have to report our operating revenues, aeronautical versus non-aeronautical versus capital projects versus debt versus in-plane passengers versus operations. So all of that data is available online for airports that are required to report. And this is where I pulled the data from. So as you can see, the enplanements for 2022, one full calendar year, for PSP was about 1.5 million passengers. And so I pulled 8 other airports that were comparable to that. You'll see Long Beach on here, Tulsa, Savannah, you'll even see Hawaii. You'll see Tucson, DSM, Alabama, ROC. So those are the airports that I did the comparables to for passengers that are onboarding commercial aircraft. So that's our comparables there for enplanements for 2022. As you'll see in yellow on the next slide for the cost per enplane passenger, Palm Springs International Airport was about $6.68 per enplane passenger. Now, when you compare us to Long Beach, like I said, it was $11, over $11. So that's the cost to the airlines per enplane passenger. So we do have a pretty low CPE compared to other airports of comparable size for enplane passengers. Our signatory landing fee is per 1,000 pounds. So this was based off of the old airport use and lease agreement, where we were $1.88. And you could see there in yellow, PSP is $1.88, but then you could see other airports ranging from $3.20 up to $4.72. So, with the new airport use and lease agreement that took effect on July 1st, the CPE raised to $2.96 to cover our operational costs. So we are still below other airports of similar employment size. So aircraft operations. So you saw that Long Beach had a $11.72 per CPE. But you also see that they also had 330,000 aircraft operations. When compared to PSP, we had 63,000 aircraft operations. So it kind of gives you an idea that even though they're similar in plane passengers and they have a higher CPE, they also have a higher operational cost for the commercial aircraft. So 330,000 compared to our 63,000 commercial aircraft. So this is just kind of to give you some context of, how we compare to other airports of similar employment size. We actually are pretty low when when it comes down to our signatory landing fees, and our operational costs for commercial aircraft to operate here at PSP. Any questions on those before I move on to the next thing? Go ahead, Mr. Coleman.
How we compare to Ontario on any of these metrics?
So Ontario was either too high or too low in employment, so that's why they weren't included on there.
They're probably too high.
Actually, I think I have,
They are much higher in employments than we are.
and they are a medium hub and we're a small hub airport.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Martin, you have a question?
Yeah, just really quick, can you remind us how long the new agreement is for?
5 years, new agreement, anyone?
Yes, so the new airport use and lease agreement is for a term of 5 years. And then we also have optional extensions in there for 2 one-year terms.
Okay, thank you.
Can I assume that in this negotiation where we continue to have the lowest fees, we did that strategically just to make sure that we're attractive and that we can continue to bring lots of airlines in here?
That's the idea, yeah. So the lower we can keep the cost per plane passenger, the more attractive we are to the airlines. When we start to get higher in that bubble, we start to move the airplanes to the airports.
Okay. Other questions? On the baggage.
Oh, and I'm sorry, let me make a correction. ALB is Albany, New York, not Alabama.
And ROC is Rochester.
Thank you. Okay, so the next thing is the baggage handling system fees. That was another question from the last meeting there. So we had projected operational costs to operate our baggage handling system at almost $900,000. And so as some of you may be aware, maybe you've even read this in the news, we did a renovation of the ticket wing, and that was completed in August 2021. And so with that came the baggage handling system operations. So that was something that was new. The baggage system came into play. That was something that we had never charged the airlines for. So we are working with the airlines. That was in the agreement to charge them for their operational costs of using that baggage handling system. So what we projected was $900,000 for operational costs for fiscal year 23-24. The average fee per plane passenger for our signatory airlines, which is a lower rate of 52 cents per plane passenger, and then the non-signatory airlines pay 65 cents per plane passenger. So that's to just help cover the cost of the operations of the baggage handling system. So this is everything that includes making sure that there's, you know, maintenance on it, any type of programming, any kind of, additional services for moving the bags, to make sure that they get on the planes in adequate timing. So this is for passengers that are checking in and getting ready to depart and board a plane. So, any questions on the baggage handling system piece?
Victoria, when the new ticketing area was open and the baggage claim or the baggage system was installed and that didn't work, did we have to kick back any money to the airlines when that system failed?
No.
Any other questions
Right, yeah, we weren't charging the airlines for any of the operational fees.
at that time?
At that time.
Got it. Other questions? Capital improvements?
So, at the last, commission meeting, I'm sorry, I tried to get as much text onto one screen, so there's a little bit, I just noticed something, but anyway. So I tried to get as much text on there to show how much we actually budgeted and then where our funding sources. And if there was any grant funds versus airport funding. And then when we had originally put the proposed completion fiscal year in there. So, I went ahead and made some updates to do a little bit of what the project description is. So you have all of that in your packet there. And what our proposed budget was, as well as just what type of funding that we have available. So, you're gonna see that this does say 22, 23. So these are projects that we started that weren't finished in fiscal year 22, 23. So it pretty much rolls over into the future fiscal years until the project's fully completed and completely closed out. So, we may be at different phases of the project. But we do anticipate using the budgeted funds that we had from prior fiscal years rolling into future fiscal years there. So you'll see that, the airport budgeted about $5 million for fiscal year 22, 23. And then we have about $3 million of federal funding that's coming back to us. And then the airport has to fund $2 million of those projects for 22, 23. And then the same thing with 23, 24, and then 24, 25. This is gonna go over 2 pages where we put in our budget, these are some of the projects that we were anticipating for these upcoming 2 fiscal years. And what type of funding sources we have allocated for them. And so you'll see there that, I believe it's on like that 3rd slide after, the start of this, it's about $46 million in projects, but we anticipate about $35 million, in grant share funding, and then about $6 million in local funding. And then that 2.5 million is for passenger facility charges, for customers' facility charges, for the design of the consolidated rental car facility. So, that's our budgeted numbers and how we're anticipating to pay for those different projects. Any questions on this? And for the record, I went ahead and added the measured day projects and their funding on there as well. So, you'll see that there.
I had one question.
Mr. Wiseman?
Yeah, I was just kind of looking at the cost for the restroom. I think it's the previous slide. And
Number
trying
12.
to wrap my head around it a little bit. Because
Yeah.
it's kind of, I think it's like $1 million per restroom. And I assume that's like a restroom with, what, like 10 stalls in it or something?
A lot more stalls than that, believe it or not.
So, yes, so, yeah, Jeremy, do you wanna go over that a little bit more?
Sure, so, just working at a previous airport, we did a restroom that was $1.5 million just for one restroom, men's and a women's. So the construction costs, architectural costs to do a restroom project is very expensive. And so we essentially have 5 sets of men's and women's restrooms, so a total of 10. And 10 million is not This is probably a pretty solid number, if not enough. So it's very expensive to do these types of projects.
Kevin, any follow-up to that?
No, thanks for clarifying. Yeah, just I suppose the scale of it is much larger than a home restroom renovation, which was the only personal benchmark I had to go on. So
Yeah, one of the things that we're trying to do is expand some of the restrooms, so that's gonna be very costly to try to expand some of the restrooms that are, you know, not sized enough for the passenger growth that we have. So that's gonna be pretty costly to do some expansions.
Quick question, gender neutral? Is that a trend with airports or just some specific Palm Springs?
We're starting to see more and more airports move in that direction, not just airports, a lot of commercial facilities are moving in that direction. Part of it is ADA and part of it is making sure that people feel comfortable in the environment they're in and inclusion. The other part though is it gives us a lot more flexibility in terms of how the restrooms are used. So we're able to clean them more efficiently, we're able to manage them more efficiently when the gender neutral.
Commissioner, sorry, Commissioner Martin, you have a question?
Yeah, just Victoria, just so I'm sure I'm understanding. If I look at, for example, line 13 or project 13, the baggage handling system, it says it has a $20 million budget, of which 13,560,000 is coming from the federal grant. Who's paying the balance? It's not listed as an airport.
Yeah, so, you're right, actually, there should be, a portion of that, because all of our most of our federal grants do require a 10% share, so that one probably needs to come up by 10%.
And I want to clarify some things that just kind of add some context here. So with that project specifically right now, that's being funded by a TSA OTA grant to us. That's unusual. We typically accept federal FAA grants. So TSA is helping us with the design. They'll help us with the install of the system itself. We're working with the FAA on the building and facility expansion because TSA doesn't fund that part of it. So once we get in further conversations with the FAA, they'll help us define what they can and can't accommodate in terms of funding for that. Then the rest of that project will likely have to be funded through some kind of PFC bond or some type of charge to the airlines.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, the airport share will be roughly $6.5 million of the 20 million.
Right now, as it stands, yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
How are we going to review the master plan? Who's going to do it?
Well, so I see that Justin Anderson is on the line. Are you still there, Justin?
Yeah, hi there. Yep. Good evening, everyone. And I have Ryan Hayes as well.
Okay. So Vice Chair Corcoran, I think I'll let Justin take the lead on this. We did have some comments and questions. I want to make sure that all the commissioner questions were satisfied completely. I know one of the questions, I can't remember which commissioner asked the question, but they wanted to know from the staff's perspective about operational disruptions to the day-to-day operations and some of these alternatives. So we'll walk through that and we'll go there. So Justin, if you want to take the lead, or Ryan.
Ryan, you guys take over?
Yes, I believe I've got the ability to share here. You all see this?
Yes, we can see it. You just want to expand it?
Let's go to slideshow.
So we have all the previous drawings that we shared a couple of weeks ago if we need to look at any of those. But I wanted to point out a couple of things. Justin and I did catch an error in our cost estimates. Both alternatives include a consolidated rental car facility, as you all recall. The consolidated rental car facility is supposed to be included in phase 1 of both alternatives. It was included in phase 2 of the cost estimates for alternative 3. So we have since corrected that. We also had some conflicting information about the timelines, and I apologize for that. We've got an updated timeline to share for you all. Similar to Victoria's slides, we got some questions about benchmarking to other airports that have undertaken significant terminal projects. And so I'll let Justin talk about those slides. So that's really, and then as Harry mentioned, you all submitted quite a few comments on the 2 alternatives, and we appreciate that. We also did our best to pull the questions out of those submissions and provide you with written answers to each of those questions. So hopefully each of you who did ask a question in your written submission received an answer. And if you didn't, please let us know. We're happy to provide any more written answers. So just as a reminder, the 2 alternatives we're looking at are basically 1A and 3. 1A is the renovate and expand. Alternative 3 is essentially replace all terminal facilities on the south side of the envelope. This is a summary slide that shows the 4 phases of this proposed construction for each of the 4 alternatives. The chart in the middle also aligns the number of gates that are recommended in our terminal program at each planning activity level, as well as the number of public and employee parking spaces that we've quantified as needed over the next 20-year planning period. And then the charts at the bottom compare the various phases, cost estimates, the number of gates that are provided at each phase, the number of RON positions. If you recall, that's remain overnight hard stand parking for commercial aircraft, the square footage of the courtyard, and the number of surface parking spaces that are provided in each alternative. This is the cost estimate again by phase. We've highlighted phase 1 in red because obviously phase 1 is the most important phase of both alternatives and the most likely phase to move forward. Phase 1 of alternative 1A is about 880 million, and phase 1 of alternative 3, because you're essentially building all the new facilities and 20 new gates, is about 2.2 billion according to our cost estimate. I mentioned the conflicting information on the timeline. So the timeline on this is really hard to estimate. There's a lot of variables that could affect this. Those of you who follow the news on the Burbank Airport know that they've been talking about a replacement terminal at Burbank for probably 8 to 10 years and moving through the various stages of environmental and design, and they're just about ready to start construction. So what this chart shows is that phase 1 of alternative 1A, kind of a best case scenario of going through these steps of environmental program definition, design, and then construction and commissioning is 3.5 years. Best case scenario in alternative 3, just because you're building more facilities, is probably closer to 5 or 6 years.
Hey, Brian, we have a question from Kevin.
Yes, go ahead, Kevin.
Ryan. Yeah, just wondering in interpreting this chart, I'm assuming each phase, NEPA, program definition, design, construction, kind of have to go sequentially and they can't really overlap. So if NEPA would, for example, go over, then the other 3 have to get pushed back by that 6-month period, right?
Yes, that's a
What
correct
happens
statement.
if, say, NEPA goes over and the program definition goes over? Does that then become a cumulative 1-year delay?
Justin, any thoughts on that? I think the answer is probably yes, but I'm curious to your perspective.
Yeah, specifically because a good portion of this project, of both alternatives and phase 1A, will require some federal funding from the FAA. The FAA is not going to fund a project until NEPA is cleared. So NEPA and the environmental is going to have to be approved before the FAA hashes out any money towards a project. Now, project definition and design, there could be some overlap there. And then depending on the type of project delivery that terminal construction is, so whether that's a traditional design bid build or design build, or what's becoming more popular nowadays in the terminal environment, CMAR, which is a construction manager at risk. Design and construction can also occur simultaneously too. So it really does depend on what type of project delivery and how the design works. But NEPA is NEPA has to be, if you want to be receiving money from the federal from the FAA, NEPA is going to have to be cleared.
So in like, say, alternative 1A, is the worst case scenario really something more like mid 2030, or is it like start of 2030?
Worst case scenario is probably as bad as you could imagine. There are airports where this could drag out for 8 to 10 years. It just depends on what environmental issues need to be mitigated, potential to mitigate environmental impacts, like say the traffic impacts are determined to be significant and there's a mitigation plan that has to be developed for the traffic impacts. That there's no way to estimate where things could go sideways, but this chart kind of more focuses on best case scenario, I think is a fair statement.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, let's proceed.
So we were also asked to do a little bit of benchmarking, and Justin and I worked on some slides. We've got a couple to share with you. Justin, you want to introduce these?
Yeah, sure. Yes. Come off mute. Yes, I do. So what we did here is we did a cost per gate terminal benchmarking analysis on other terminals, large terminals and small as well, that are currently being either in design or under construction or have been completed recently. What that overall total program cost was, how many gates were there, and also the cost per gate. Now, there is I do want to throw out this asterisk right up front, is that these terminals and these projects occurred in different parts of the country where the construction market is not the same as what it would be in Palm Springs or in other the southwest portions of the United States. So that does have a big impact on these, and also the scopes of these programs have also varied. So although the cost per gate metric is good to use, and it's a metric that the airlines like to see on how many more additional gates are we going to be getting with this program, and how much that cost per gate is going to be, because some of that's going to be passed along to it could be potentially passed along to the airlines. So Kansas City just opened up earlier this year. That's been probably the largest that's opened up in the United States from a medium hub primary airport. They had 39 gates, $1.5 to $1.6 billion. That's about 39 million per gate. So that included tearing down one of their curvilinear concourses, building a new parking garage, and apron road work, and then also the terminal as well. Burbank, as Ryan has mentioned, they're at 14 gates. So this is also a ground-loaded terminal. So the alternatives that we presented is a two-level terminal, a two-level concourse that includes boarding bridges. It's more efficient of a building space that we've decided from the study team. Burbank is not going to be a two-level concourse. They are staying at a single level. And then based off of what their environmental has cleared them to do, I don't believe they're expected to get larger than 14 gates at that airport. Columbus, Ohio, they're in design right now for a 35-gate concourse, million square feet. They're looking at about $2 billion. This number does not include a $120 million CONRAC that was just completed that's going to be connected into this new terminal as well. So they are in schematic design for that currently. Mobile, Alabama, this first phase is looking at 5 gates, about $330 million. It's supposed to be expanded out to 12 gates. New Orleans opened up, I believe, in 2019. This was when the construction market was still pretty favorable. Before the pandemic hit and materials just skyrocketed. So they got a pretty good bang for their buck, 38 million per cost per gate, 1.3 billion. And that was relocating their entire terminal across the airfield. Des Moines is in the process. They are, I believe, in design documents or construction documents right now. Their first phase, so this is including new roadway work, new apron, new parking garage expansion. Their first phase is looking at about $448 million according to their project definition document, and only getting about 6 gates. So it's about $75 million cost per gate. This is looking to expand, though, I believe, until 18 gates. So those later phases are going to be cheaper. This would be comparable to that alternative 3, where a lot of the upfront cost in that first phase is taking place. So then when we look at Palm Springs, right, if you want to go to the next slide, if you want to look at the 2 alternatives here, we do the cost per gate analysis by phase here on total constructed gates per phase. So in alternative 1A, we are only constructing 26 gates, although there will be a total of 34 gates because of the Bono concourse. So with everything up front on alternative 1A in that phase 1, you're looking about 50 million per gate. Now the CONRAC, the cost of the CONRAC is not included in this program because those costs are pushed off to the rental car companies and not the airlines. So when we do this cost per gate analysis, we take the cost of the CONRAC out of there. Alternative 3, that phase 1, it is going to be a lot higher. And without the CONRAC in that first, without the cost of the CONRAC, the cost per gate of the terminal facility, roadway facility, you're looking at $83 million per gate for that. So, any questions on this, or yeah, I guess I'll open the room up for discussion. I see Tracy, you have a question?
Yeah, hi, this is Tracy Martin. We've seen lots of different examples of where cost estimates have been drastically underestimated and construction costs have been sometimes double what was expected. Where do you think you fall in terms of being very, very conservative or very, very aggressive on your cost estimates?
So right now we are holding about between a 45% in terms of soft costs and contingency. We're at about an extra 45% for that. So at this master planning phase, conceptual master planning, we are still pretty high level with our cost estimates and still pretty conservative. That accuracy and that contingency definitely goes down as design proceeds. But right now we are we're still on the pretty conservative side.
Okay, so you would feel comfortable with these cost estimates thus far, or do you think we already are going to be looking at overruns relative to this?
We do believe that right now we're feeling pretty comfortable.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions?
Go ahead, Robert. Yeah, Bob Raymond here. Where does demolition fall into this? Is that even a significant amount between the 2 alternatives? Demolition of Bono and regional versus leaving the Bono?
Yeah, so demolition is included in this by their respective phase. Phase 2 and alternative 1A demolition is included as we do have to demo the regional concourse. And then in alternative 3, demolitions included, I believe, in phase 2 on that one, as we add on to the middle concourse, the middle pier finger in alternative 3.
Commissioner Feldman?
So when the project commences, there will be in 1A, the existing gates in Bono that will continue to be used?
Correct, most of the existing.
And that doesn't show you?
in terms of operational cost there.
So how many gates is that?
I'd have to go back and look through the phasing, and maybe Ryan and Justin can better answer that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so this is, alternative one. Was that the question?
No, I'm just trying to ask, what is the baseline number of gates that stay in use at the airport? That is really line 1 of 1A, is existing gates that are in use, because you're totaling up, if you go back to that slide. All your totals in each phase, does not account for the existing gates which continue to be available for use here. So essentially, above phase 1 is pre-phase or whatever you want to call it. There's 8 or 9 or 8 gates up there in the Bono, Council?
So we've got 8 gates in the Bono, we've got 10 gates at the RJ. And then we would be adding an additional 7 gates, I believe, in the north extension, until we demo the RJ.
So I just think commissioners need to understand that we're starting with, 15 plus 7 or whatever the total number is, 15 plus 9, 15 plus 5, I'm just using that number. And that's what you really, if you want to talk about cost per gate, that's fine. But in terms of the capacity of the airport, the way the slide is constructed, it makes it appear that phase 1A, we end with 26 constructed gates, and in the alternative 3, we end with 32. Oh, we get 6 more gates for only $6 million more per gate, but that's not really what's going on.
So I completely understand the question. So these are number of constructed gates in the phase. So Brian, if you actually want to go back to the summary slide.
Sure.
Right there. So in the bottom 2 tables, the 3rd row, it does tell you how many gates are actually going to be operational in the entire program during each phase of the project. So with phase 1, with the 7 gate, you're going to have the 7 new gates. I'm referring to phase 1, alternative 1A. You're going to have the 7 gates to the north, the 8 Bono Concourse gates, and then also the 10 regional gates. Phase 2, we're eliminating the regional gates. So there is the regional concourse. However, we're adding an expansion on to where the pier finger is, and they're all going to be larger aircraft at those gates as the trend of getting rid of the 50-seat regional aircraft into mainline aircraft, the 737s or A320s. You'll have more seat capacity at the airport with that gate count.
And Justin, the reason that there's less gates in phase 1 of 3 versus 1A is simply because we're building as many gates as we can possibly build in phase 1 of alternative 3, which is the drawing on the very top right corner of this slide, while keeping as much of the airport open as possible. So it's really it's a phasing scenario where we'd build more than 20 gates in phase 1 if we could, but that's really the maximum we can while keeping the airport open and operational.
Yeah. Until the regional concourse is demolished, as you in that top right image of phase 1 alternative 3A, you see 2 taxi lanes against the new concourse, because we need to be able to provide access to those new gates, and we can't continue to build on until the regional concourse is demolished.
David, make sense?
Commissioner Banks?
Yeah, so speaking of that, you mentioned keeping as much of the airport open as possible, implying that obviously some of the airport will not be open. Is there, I don't know how you quantify a cost to that, other than maybe looking at other airports who have gone through a similar exercise. But is that cost factored into one of these line items or some of these line items somewhere?
So are you referring to things like reduction in our concessions revenue, things like that?
Yeah. And I don't even know if airline, I mean, is there, from an airline standpoint, is there, I don't know, yeah. loss during that time. I don't know, I didn't think of overall.
That's a good question, Ryan or Justin. Is that
It
anything?
is a good question. It's not something that we quantify in the master planning process, but there certainly is, there would be a cost. There would be also just general operational challenges, which we talked about a lot 2 weeks ago, about the operational challenges of keeping the airport open while you're building these new gates in either 1A or 3. And it may be that there are times when the airport has less gates available and the airlines just have to spread out their flights to make it work. Justin, any other thoughts?
Yeah, the loss of concession revenue, the changes in O&M costs are typically not quantified in a master plan. It is definitely figured out more later on in the design phases, and but know that those concessions will also be, when the new terminal, the new concourse, new phase opens, more concession revenue would be picked up and recaptured in that. And how airport design is working right now is customer experience is looking to be the highest priority. So when you are building the new concourse, building a new terminal, figuring out how to strategically place those concessions in a new building is a lot easier than trying to reconfigure that into an existing facility. So the idea and the hope is to have these properly placed in the new concourse at a strategic place where you're having high foot traffic, so that not only you can recapture that revenue, but get more than what you were getting before in the existing concourse.
Let's go.
Right. Yeah. So Ryan, I think in terms of the terminal benchmarking, those were what we had in terms of a cost per gate. So yeah, Ryan, if you want to go back to the original, those two slots.
And that was really the only new information that we had. We do have all the drawing phases, the alternatives per phase if anyone wants to look at a certain drawing, but that's all we wanted to share in terms of new information tonight.
Are you going to review now the advantages and disadvantages of these?
Next question.
Go ahead, Dave.
On the funding for 879 million, phase 1 and 2.2 billion. We have that money, no fuss, no muss, we don't have to worry about
No. Okay, so part of what Lean Pump is hoped to do is to develop a financial plan or financial tool for this phasing, and so they'll get to that at some point. Part of what our job will be once an alternative is selected is to be really, really creative in figuring out how we get that money and make sure that we're banking it and getting it ready for the project. And part of this is, so if you recall, the master planning process is, there are 2 areas where the FAA actually approves it, and that's in the aeronautical forecast. And then with the airport layout plan, this would be a part of the airport layout plan component. Part of that is telling the FAA this is what we'd like to do so that they can get their ducks in a row and start funding some of this.
Commissioner Wiseman, you have a question?
Yeah, Ryan, you mentioned at the start of this that you had an update or correction to the cost estimates for some of them.
Yes, so the total cost did not change. So 1A's total cost is 2.2 billion. Our alternative 3's total cost is just under 2.8 billion. What changed is we had the CONRAC in alternative 3, which is about Justin, I'm trying to remember, $340 million facility. We had it listed in phase 2. It should actually be in phase 1. The intention is to build the CONRAC as one of the first projects of this terminal program. So it's now included in the red number in phase 1 of both estimates.
And its contingencies too, that go along with it.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so any other questions about the updates? We're good. So let me make the suggestion. Brian, why don't you just review with us, if you would, the advantages and disadvantages of 1A? And then let's ask the commissioners that have any further questions that have not been answered. I have a couple to that, and I'll do the same to number 3. Can we do that?
Sure, absolutely. I don't have them right in front of me, but off the top of my head, obviously the biggest advantage of 1A is that it is cheaper to build gates in phase 1. The challenge with alternative 3 is you have to build the entire facility, including all the head house functions and 20 gates in order to make it operational in phase 1. In phase 1 of alternative 1, all construction goes to the north. You build a CONRAC to the north, a new second level concourse that can also include the FIS, as well as new concessions and amenities like the USO facility and things like of those nature. Another large advantage of alternative 1 is the airport's about to spend a lot of money investing in both baggage claim systems and baggage handling. And phase 1 of alternative 1 essentially repurposes and takes advantage of those investments, whereas in alternative 3 essentially proposes to rebuild all of those.
Excuse me, Ryan. We're going to ask you to stop sharing, and we're going to put the advantages and disadvantages up for the commission. So if you could stop, thank you. One moment, we're going to put the slides up for the advantages and disadvantages.
Okay.
So why don't we do that? Let me ask a couple of questions for being that up. The first thing, Ryan, there was a comment made, I don't know, Harry, if you had made it or not in our last meeting, that option 1A, if we do that, there's no place to put the CONRAC, the temporary CONRAC. And I thought, Harry, that we had said that would move to the south side of the airport in those parking lots with trailers and then cars there, and that could be where we put it if we move forward with 1A.
Yeah, so once we go through the alternatives, I actually had, so one of the commissioners, I don't remember who, asked about the operational impacts of each phase from the airport operations perspective. So we actually put a slide together for that to show you and to demonstrate what the puzzle pieces actually are for us on an operational level.
Okay, and they're not in our package.
They're not in the package.
Okay. And that'll be answered in that. Okay. And Ryan, I know that we had some concerns about a 5-story building in 1A for the CONRAC. And we said, how much would it cost to bury 1 or 2 floors? Do you have any other updates on that?
I do have an update on that. We talked to both our rental car sub as well as our cost estimator, and the consensus was just in general, you're probably adding 30% per level to go underground versus above ground.
Should we move forward since you still have the other piece to share? Should we just move forward to number 3? Any other questions on 1A advantages, disadvantages? We'll just review number 3. A little bit of Harry's operational piece.
Commissioner Martin, you have a question?
Yeah, something just occurred to me as you were going through the phases. It looks like we add 7 gates in 1A in phase 1. But then during construction of phase 2, we lose 10 gates. So that takes us back down to 15 usable gates during the phase 2 construction. Is that true?
That is accurate. That is accurate. That's actually one of the challenges identified on the operational slide that I'm going to show you.
Okay, and how long is phase 2? Is it a 1-year build? Is it a 10-year build?
Justin, what do you think? Phase 2 of alternative 1A is essentially expanding the head house to the south, as well as converting the RJ concourse from a walkout concourse to kind of a.
It'll probably be around a 3-year build. So we were taking a look at that phase specifically on how we could compensate for the loss of the 10 regional jets, on the regional jet concourse. And airports have gotten creative on how to make up that gate capacity. They've added sprung structures. They've added some busing operations to some remote parking areas for the aircraft. You are living through construction. It is not an ideal situation. Of course, the end product would be better than what's there existing today with the larger gate capacity. But there are ways to transport your passengers to a remote structure or remote parking spots to have aircraft parked there.
Okay, yeah, I think it would be interesting to hear how that would actually work, because I was 1A all the way until it occurred to me that we're actually going to lose gates for several years versus what we have today.
But you're going to be with having a greater gate capacity, being able to accommodate larger upgauge aircraft. You're going to have more seating capacity at the airport, because you'll be able to handle more 737s, more A320s, A321s versus the E175s and CRJ and the CRJs.
Okay, so it's not linear.
Right. And I also want to note on phase 2 specifically, we do have a hammerhead at the end of the concourse that we could be using that we could use as swing gates if need be, to get some more gates, meaning a passenger boarding bridge can access to positions out there. So there are some options on that phase specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments?
Commissioner Young, you have a question?
Yes, to follow up to Commissioner Martin's question. So if indeed there are significant sort of impairments to the experience of flyers in that phase 2 of 1A, is it fair to say that that's going to be a significant percentage of travelers who will have what is likely a less satisfying experience than they probably currently do? So we'll have some percentage that are having a considerably better experience, and another percentage of whatever magnitude that is likely going to suffer more, if you will, for 2 or 3 years.
That is, I mean, the passengers who are going to be operating out of the Bono concourse during that phase will have probably a better experience than the passengers who would have been operating out of the regional concourse that now during construction need to hop on a bus or go to a sprung structure to wait for their aircraft. But it is during a construction project that occurs all over the place. It is not uncommon. Airports are evolving all the time. And Harry, I don't know if you want to add on to that. Being into AAAE and everything, it's a common thing.
No, that's accurate. I mean, any airport going through construction of that magnitude, this magnitude, would have those impacts, particularly if you're doing any type of modification to an existing facility.
Okay, let's talk about the advantages of alternative 3.
Yeah, so obviously the biggest advantage of 3 is that brand new facility. You can design in the Palm Springs charm, new terminal, new head house, new concourse, new vehicle parking, new con rack. The terminal systems are obviously going to be more energy efficient. We do have, when we talked about this 2 weeks ago, we've included cost estimates for a new central utility plant to go with either of these alternatives. So the thought is that the utilities are such that you're going to have to rebuild them in both, but obviously they're going to be operated more, the terminal is going to operate more efficiently in alternative 3 because the facilities are newer and designed to modern code standards. The minimalization of phasing disruptions, because you're building the entire facility to the south while you're essentially operating the existing terminal facilities. So that's the third bullet. The fourth advantage is that the landside area for the con rack is larger. And then the last bullet listed is that it presents an opportunity for the community to reimagine what the Wexler terminal is used for.
Advantages?
Yeah, of course, the largest disadvantage is the cost. The spending $2 billion up front is something, as Justin mentioned, that Columbus, Ohio is doing right now, but Columbus, Ohio has 5 million employments and a lot more passengers to justify the need. It's a lot of money for a small hub airport. 20 gates is a significant number of gates for a small hub airport, and that is entirely related to the seasonality at this airport. You wouldn't need so many gates if the passenger traffic was spread throughout the year, but it's not. It happens in, as we know, in half the year. Phase one is really only a net increase in two gates because you're currently operating 18 gates, even though half of those gates are walkout gates. So there is a up gauge in gates. Half of those gates are being converted from walkout gates to jet bridge gates, but the net increase is only 2 gates in phase one. The amount of landside parking space available, the envelope is very tight just because the airport doesn't own all the property between Kirk Douglas Way and Ramon. So it's not as greenfield site as we would like it to be. And the site is still constrained, and those constraints are going to have to be designed around in alternative 3. Let's see, the gating operations on the RJ concourse would be reduced during construction of phase 1, so that's a disadvantage. This changes the connection of downtown Palm Springs to the airport via Talkwish, so that's considered a disadvantage. There's most likely a longer time frame from the end of the master plan to ribbon cutting, just because you're building more facilities in alternative 3. And I think the second to last bullet's an important one. Once you begin construction on a $2 billion program, there's no turning back. It's kind of like comparing doing a renovation to your house versus building a new house. Once you start building that new house, there is no turning back. There's no stopping point. You're fully committed at that point. And then lastly, there would also be some operational challenges so there's operational challenges that would require some shuttling of rental car passengers in 1A. In alternative 3, you're probably going to have to shuttle some public passenger shuttling during construction of phase 1.
Clarification questions? Anybody else? Any questions?
Commissioner Banks?
Talking about, I guess I'll use the term shelf life. I know the last meeting you talked about, airports are being designed these days for 20 years, 30 years, something like that, I think is what I remember. But looking at phase or option 1A versus option 3, like what are we really thinking a shelf life would be for the Wexler building, even if it was fully, retrofitted, energy, seismic, all that kind of stuff? Do you have a sense, or like an accurate sense what that would be versus new?
So with alternative,
Justin, we did have our mechanical engineers and our electrical engineers visit the site and inspect the building. They do think it can be renovated and the life of the building can be extended. I don't know if we know an exact number of years, Justin.
Yeah, the exact number of years. I don't know if I have an exact answer for that right now. But the summary of that visit, of the assessment, was a central utility plant makes the most sense to serve in the alternative 1A, and to add that those efficient types of building systems into the Wexler building, and any type of new concourse that comes off of there. So that was included into the estimate. but yeah, with the concourses that would be built off of the Wexler and Terminal 1A, you know, you're looking at that new building lifespan of a facility of 30 to 50 years.
So I just want to build on the comment because I have heard that comment that if we go with 3, that's a brand new building, and so it's a building that will last 50 years or more, we hope. But what you're saying is that building 1A, just because we're retrofitting 2 of the buildings, doesn't necessarily mean that they were going to have less life, or what's the word I use. There'll be less, longevity to this option versus 3 because of the systems you're proposing to put in. Is that correct?
Yeah, right, and that will get more defined. That is, once you talk about building systems, regardless of the type of, the alternative that we go with, your new concourse, and whoever designs it is going to put in as much new energy efficient building systems in there as possible. So that will improve the longevity of that facility. So yeah, there will be the lifespan of that facility will match or be close to what alternative 3 is giving you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Feltman?
Can we go back to the advantages of alternative 3? Okay, so I talked about this at the last meeting, but if we're gonna cast votes or whatever again, I just need to say for the record that the last bullet point is essentially creating a white elephant out of this building. The notion that the community is going to have an opportunity to create something here, it's just, there's no plan to that effect today. The community is struggling to renovate one little 800-seat theater in downtown Palm Springs right now that just went from a $2 million city investment to $22 million in one little shop. And the notion that the community is going to take what is probably a 20 times larger facility and create a new use out of it in anybody's lifetime that's in this room, or babies in the community who are just born, is just not realistic. And while we're looking at, hard data about alternative 1A and alternative 3 kind of in a vacuum, we also have a responsibility to the community to understand what the implications are for this building to be a white elephant. I'm no raging preservationist. I just want to say that for the record. I mean, this is a historic building, but I am not a raging preservationist. What I am is committed to not having buildings collapse and fall into disuse, to become dilapidated. For those who have a history in the community, we have a record of properties laying in disuse for substantial periods of time. And I won't elaborate on what all of them are, but anybody who wants to know more in depth, the number of properties in Palm Springs that have not been developed or redeveloped, the list is lengthy.
Okay, thank you, David. So what I want to do now is I want to let Harry talk about the operation impact, and then invite Scott White, who is on our working committee, to join the conversation with any questions or comments. But prior to that, Harry, let's go to your slide about the operational impact that you talked about.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Corcoran. I think Victoria's going to pull the slides up for me, and I'll try and walk you through. So in terms of the operational impact and how we look at things, just in the operational environment, what we're always trying to do is mitigate issues, make sure the customer experience is preserved to the best extent possible during a construction project, and identify what systems are going to be affected. And I don't want to call these challenges, they are impacts to the day-to-day operation, but I just want to highlight these as things that we would be considering as an airport team as we start to go into construction and development of the facility, what we're up against, and how we would have to try and solve that problem. So these are just basic issues that we would need to try and solve with each of these alternatives. I know that slide's a little bit small. Hopefully we can expand it a bit for the folks in the room. But what we did is we put both alternatives 1A and alternatives 3 on the same slide for side-by-side comparison. We dug down into phase 1 and phase 2 of those alternatives specifically, just to give you a sense for what systems or what branches of the airport would be impacted during any phase of construction. So at the very top of the slide, you'll see the total, the full build out of both alternatives. The second part of that slide, as you scroll down, and it's a little bit wonky in the room, I do apologize for the folks in the room. But there's a side-by-side comparison of phase 1 for alternatives 1A and alternatives 3. For alternative 1A, the challenges or the impacts that we would be trying to solve, we'd be solving for X here, are frankly a number of them. The first being is that we would need to figure out the immediate relocation of Signature Flight Support, because obviously their ramp space, their building is partially in the area where the north extension would be constructed. We would also have to solve for the displacement of the USO and the customs facility, whether that be some kind of temporary trailer, whether they ceased operations for a period of time. We don't know what that looks like yet, but we would have to figure out what happens to the USO and customs facility, what we call Hangar 1, and that would have to be demolished. Because the rental car facility is anticipated in alternative 1A to go north of the terminal, we would have to solve the problem of displacement of the rental cars temporarily. So the idea being that they would likely go into lots A and B and probably C in front of the Wexler concourse, but then that displaces pretty much all of our paid parking in front of the concourses. So we would need to solve the problem of what to do with the paid parking and how to do that. In theory, they would just move to the overflow lot at the south end of the airport, right? And we would have to implement some shuttle operation for paid parking to the terminal.
Likewise, you could just the opposite too, right?
We could do the opposite as well.
You could send the cars over to lot F, and then we could have some sort of a bus system there.
Correct. Okay. In alternative 1A, we have the possibility of temporary bag plane shutdowns while the building is being extended. So we would have to solve a problem for that. In addition to that, right now, the master plan alternative is driving the development of the bag plane expansion. The reason for that is if we extend on the north end of this building, we're going to have to seismically retrofit the building to accommodate that extension. If we decide not to repurpose this building, it's just a simple extension that we can go with, if that makes sense. We have probable restrictions or complete impacts to the concession spaces, specifically for El Mirasol and Coachella Valley Coffee, which currently exist on the ground level. For those of you on Zoom, that's going to be area E. We have probable.
Can I ask does that also impact the commissary kitchen that's behind there?
Potentially, yes.
Just for background, if you guys don't know, most of the concessions at the airport in the new process will rely on that commissary kitchen to operate functionally.
And that's exactly right. So area E, that kitchen is a ghost kitchen, so it will serve a large part of the facility for the concessions program. Also within that, we have to solve the problem of deliveries to and from that kitchen or that area once we got through some of the phasing of that, just to make sure that the concessions program was made whole. Item F, we have probable restrictions for aircraft parking at gates 5 and 7 of Bono due to crane activity for construction of the North Branch. as well as materials hauling. So one of the things that we have to figure out is how to get materials in and out in that confined space to the concourse. And likely some of that activity would have to go through the ramp to make that happen. Item G, paid public parking will be displaced. I think I mentioned that. Item H, we would have to find a laydown yard for the construction of that. So we don't have any space identified for that right now. And that space would be competing, frankly, with the paid public parking, just for materials to build that. Item I, there are probable power outages with switchover to the central utility plant. Once that central utility plant is built, I don't know what that looks like in terms of power outages, but utilities will be affected. And item J is the same. There will be probable power outages to tie-in systems in the north wing. We actually experienced this a lot with ticketing when we went through that project, where we had the switchover facilities were upgrading power. We had significant power outages, and it actually did impact some flights during that time while we resolved those power outages. So that's phase one of alternative 1A. On phase one of alternative 3, what the airport would be solving for. Item A would be probable disruptions to access road that displace traffic to Ramon and El Cielo. Item B would be employee parking, so we would have to displace all of our employee parking. Fortunately, at the moment, we're working on a parking improvement plan, and we've identified a lot for that. So if you look at item B, that is where employee parking is expected to go at the moment. Item C in alternative 3, we would be displacing Uber and Lyft, and we have to solve for that. Their staging areas, not their pickup locations. Item D, there is a possible loss of gates 16 through 20 at the RJ Concourse due to construction while we're in construction. And I would say that's not possible, that's probable. Item E, public parking replacement. So this would require a busing operation for us to figure out public parking. We would likely still need to relocate Signature FBO to accommodate for that. And item G, overflow parking would be completely displaced while we build out the new facility. So that's phase 1 of 1A and alternatives 3. Are there any questions before I go to phase 2?
Hi, Harry. Todd Burke here. What you just mentioned about the probability, of losing 5 gates with letter D, is that factored into what Mead and Hunt already updated us on, or is this in addition to that?
That's factored into what Mead and Hunt already briefed on.
Thank you.
Okay. And then phase 2 of alternative 1A. We've got a few other issues that we would need to solve for. Again, probable power outages as we tie in systems to the south wing of the airport as we build out ticketing there, as well as the rest of the head house. Item L, reduced gate capacity. We would need to identify hard stand locations for busing operation for the loss of gates. And I believe Mead and Hunt has already indicated where those might be in phase 1 of the process. And then the third one is loss or substantially restricted cargo access through our gate 15 area. For those of you who are unfamiliar with gate 15, right as you're approaching the terminal through the access road, that's that area where the canopies exist. Where the VIP is, there's a gate that leads to the air side. At that point, that's where we do all the cargo inspections and things for the airport. So we would have to solve for that problem as well. We had no, at least right now, there could be, but no identifiable impacts for phase 2 or 3 and alternative 3. Are there any questions?
Makes sense. Right, before we take a break, a quick break, Scott. Scott, you want to join us? Scott White, obviously is the leader of Greater Palm Springs and is on our working group for the long range plan. So Scott, any comments or questions, please?
Good evening, everybody. Happy holidays. Thank you for the opportunity. Harry, a quick question. At the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned that this was presented to the airlines and their preference was alternative 1A. I guess my question is, have they seen this updated plan with your noted disruptions and potential impact of 1A and 3? So I guess have they been updated with all of this recent information?
They have not. No, this was within the last week that we really sat down with the executive team here and looked around the facility to see what those impacts would be.
Okay, I mean, I look through the lens of, we really have three customers. We have the airlines, which are a critical customer, the traveler, and then of course your operational team. So, to me, it's whatever scenario is going to provide the best experience for both the traveler and the airlines. And it seemed like when Mead Hunt was talking, as much as I would love to have a brand new airport and have option number 3, it sounded like 1A was giving the airport the greatest amount of flexibility to make adjustments during the different phasing processes based on what needs are, if you continue to grow or if you need to shrink or you need to make adjustments based on technology. I guess I'm not coming up with a recommendation. I think there needs to be more dialogue with the airlines, certainly. And I think some of the issues that you just brought up in regards to the disruptions and the impact it's going to have for you, your staff, and travelers needs to be, I think, further vetted out before a decision can be made. But that's just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Scott. Any other questions or comments?
Not from me. Thank you.
Okay. What I want to do now is just take a 5-minute break. And then we'll come in and we'll have discussions and reach out to all of you for your comments. Can we do that? We good? 5-minute break. Okay, we're back on. Just give us a high sign if you can hear us, okay? Great. All right, so what we want to do now is just open up for comments. And in your point of view, if there's any additional questions, throw those in as well. And Kevin, I know that your hand was raised when we went to break. Would you like to make your comments or questions, please?
Sure. Had two questions. I was wondering, one, if I'm sorry, I'm blanking, but the hotels and resorts, Palm Springs Resorts, had weighed in with their opinion, and also if anyone had talked to, if you recall, a while back we had Mr. Wexler's son visit us and give us a review of the historic nature of the Wexler terminal. And I was curious if anyone had asked him his opinion on the idea to sort of repurpose the original terminal versus expand and keep it in use.
Does anyone have any contact with Wexler?
Yeah, we did early on in this process, and I believe he attended the public meeting where we presented the first alternatives, the first round of alternatives. My understanding was that he was comfortable either direction we went. We can certainly confirm that with him, but having discussed it with him at that time, he was comfortable with either alternative.
Kevin, I don't think there's been any formal presentation to PS Resorts. But for what it's worth, Optab told me this afternoon he would support 1A. But I don't think that's been, I'm not aware of any formal presentation to PS Resorts, but that's where Optab was this afternoon. What it's worth.
There has not been.
Right, there's not. Other comments, questions?
Hi, Todd Burke here. I would just say, leading up to this evening, I was firmly in camp 1A. But I must say that Harry's slide that gave some of the disruptions, to me, it only reinforces that I think we have some more questions that need to be answered. And I think what I would love to know is, we know that the airlines are firmly in favor of 1A based on cost alone. But is this new disruption slide going to make any difference to them? Should we include them? I'm just not as comfortable tonight making a decision, an informed decision, as I was before this evening's meeting started.
Well, I do want to chime in a little bit on that, Commissioner, with two things. The first thing is the airlines are fairly used to this at most airports. And so for the most part, they understand what impacts will happen during the course of construction. Now, will they understand these specific issues here? No, they'll expect Palm Springs staff to solve them. That's what we're going to do if it comes to that. But the airlines are very familiar with that. The other thing I'll say, and I don't think Ryan really mentioned this, or at least didn't bring this home, is there's considerable cost with alternative 3 in the first phase. And I know that's a real concern for the Mead and Hunt team. And so if alternative 3 is selected, we're really going to have to focus on being creative and how we raise the funds to get that work done.
And we also said, chatted on the break, that if we're going to keep to our timeline, we need to make a recommendation tonight. And that we would encourage any additional feedback from for the airlines to be included in the package and presentation that goes to City Council on January 15th or 16th. So we will upgrade or update any of these issues as we learn more about this and get other input. But I think we have to make a recommendation tonight, knowing that this is a fluid process. And also, the subcommittee that's working on this, the ad hoc committee for the long range plan, I think that we'll keep that group informed prior to the City Council meeting. If something significant changes in this discussion, I think we can reach out to certainly the ad hoc group But I think right now we've got to move forward to keep this thing on plan. And the city council is expecting some feedback from us tonight.
Great. Kevin, Harry, thank you. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you,
Commissioner
sir.
Caldwell?
This is Daniel Caldwell. I think Harry kind of alluded to this, both opportunities, because we got opportunities to shine. We already know that. I think alternative 3, that 2.2 billion phase 1, and I think we can all be assured that it's going to be higher than that after it's said and done. That seems unpalatable to me. And I think the city council will find that that's not going to work. 879, I think we can work with it. That doesn't scare me at all. And I think, Harry said, if we go that phase 3, it's like we're in it. There's no turning back. That part scares me. So from my vantage point, alternative A, phase 1 just makes more sense. That's just me.
Thank you. Other comments? Here's your chance. Lobby like mad. Comments or thoughts? Want to share your thoughts?
I would tend to agree with Daniel. I mean, I think the financial costs are a significant factor, and that's why the airports, the airlines seem to favor that one. I mean, it is a concern with the disruptions that Harry was mentioning. It seems to be significant, more significant, but at the same time, I just think it's a more reasonable approach. It provides more opportunities for flexibility. It seems more reasonable. And I think the cost is should outweigh everything else. I mean, it's not $500,000 difference. So it might be nice to have alternative to the events. I don't think it's practical.
Commissioner Whitehead?
Yeah, I was wondering, I think this was touched briefly on in a slide or at some point, but the funding plan for either scenario, do we have any sense of what that's composed of?
Harry, I'm happy to jump in here or you can answer.
Go ahead, Ryan.
That is in our scope to figure out how to fund this. That's a next step after this decision is made. And as Harry mentioned, we intend to fund this. There's various sources, and that's in the Q&A that was submitted in writing in your packet, the various sources that are available for terminal funding. There are federal grants, there is borrowing money, both revenue bonds and general obligation bonds is a way to fund terminal projects. The thought is we're going to do everything possible to fund either one of these alternatives with traditional funding sources, but as Harry mentioned, there may be a need to be creative and look at non-traditional airport funding sources if need be to cover the cost.
Would public-private partnerships be the non-traditional thing you're suggesting?
Absolutely, correct, yes.
Go ahead.
Commissioner White, sorry. I like 1A in that phase 1 is a shorter period of time and cheaper. But also if we're in a recession or COVID again hits or something and traffic just drops again, we can stop at phase 1. We don't have to do phase 2 and phase 3. With option 3, phase 1 is quite long. I mean, you might do the whole thing if you do phase 1. That's the big, most expensive stuff.
It's hard to be a little pregnant with phase 3.
Yeah.
Commissioner Young?
So Ryan, just to follow up on your question. So if through public-private partnerships or other funding options, I mean, for those of us who don't have meaningful experience there, I mean, is it reasonable to presume, given the current climate, that if the option 3 was chosen, that there's a probable pathway for funding for that? Or is it a fairy tale or close to one to imagine that that's a reasonable possibility? I mean, I gather that obviously 1A is an easier financial path, but is 3 just unrealistic financially?
I think it may be challenging under traditional funding sources. So without looking at a public-private partnership, but there has been, my understanding is there's been interest expressed. So it's certainly a possibility. There are a lot of steps past a master planning level of effort that would have to go into convincing a private firm that this makes financial sense. So it may add steps, it may add timeline, but I do think it's a feasible option.
I have a follow-up, if I may, which is, I suppose, slightly different question, but would it be fair to frame this that either option is best case scenario 4 to 7 years, probably an 18-month or so differential between 1A and 3? Sounds like, based on Harry's additional feedback to us today, that we can assume that a significant number of passengers in option 1A will have, though again expected, but will have challenging travel experiences during a good part of the construction of 1A, and so that the many passengers will have a mediocre or sub-mediocre travel experience during that time. Whereas if we were to opt for 3, I mean, other than opening operational issues, that when 3 open, that everyone who entered 3 is going to have presumptively a considerably more satisfactory experience, but obviously at higher cost and with additional time. Is that a fair generalization?
There are more gates, more jet bridge gates open in phase 1 of alternative 3. That's correct. There's 20 gates versus 15 as you're going into phase 2 of 1A. So that I think it's a fair statement. There is the higher potential for some passengers to have a decreased experience during construction in 1A.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Martin?
Yeah, I have a question for Ryan. It's been something that's been going through my mind since I joined the commission a few months ago. The demand that's driving the need for the growth in the airport, I understand, doubling of passengers. Do we know what is driving that expected demand growth? Specifically, is it increased traffic into Palm Springs City? Is it really focused more on the eastern part of the valley? Where is the demand being driven from?
Great question. We've got a lot of this in the forecast chapter of the master plan. That's chapter 2. That's on the master plan website. So the forecasts were prepared by a sub-consultant firm called Unison Consulting, and their economists analyzed the market. And I think it's a combination of increased capture of the Palm Springs market, but also just increased tourism to the valley. The plans are for more hotels, more resorts, and basically more tourism. So I think it's a combination of those two factors that's driving the demand for more airline passenger traffic.
So if we had to ask of the additional 1.5 million passengers or 3 million passengers per year, do we know how much are going to the East Valley versus the West Valley, or is that not a knowable thing?
I don't think we have that ability to quantify where they're going specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fong? Oh, you're still on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. It's after midnight here in London. I'm a little foggy right now. Do I understand then that because we don't really know where the increased traffic is coming from? I mean, there was an allusion to, we understand that there may be more tourism. One of the reasons why I have thought that alternative 3 was a good one is that if this airport is growing and there are more people throughout the valley, down as far as Coachella and perhaps even Salton Sea, people who are residents who may at some point want to go visit their families in Mexico, where there's additional growth down in that area, where there are residents down in that area that would use the Palm Springs Airport, then the idea that Alternative 3 provides more gates and a better, more forward-looking facility, and indeed would provide more employment in its construction throughout the Coachella Valley. I've thought that option 3 was a good one for all of those reasons. Am I correct in hearing that we don't really know where this growth is coming from, other than, well, there'll be more hotels and more tourists?
So at the master planning level, they don't know where this growth is coming from. However, we do have a little more, I guess we have additional data within the airport that we can certainly share. And if you don't mind, Vice Chair, I'd like to ask Scott White to weigh on this, because he actually has a pulse on this as well.
Scott, can you join us?
Yeah, I think we have to remind ourselves that there's about 10,000 homes that are in the pipeline throughout the valley. You have 2,000 coming in Rancho Mirage. You've got another 2,000 that are permitted in Palm Desert, and then considerably more that in the East Valley between Indio and Coachella. So I think our residential population has been forecasted by the Water District, Edison, and other people. So I believe that's also taken into consideration for the needs for the airport for long-term growth. The tourism is certainly, if you look at the capacity, we're running an average occupancy right now of about 62%. So, we're easily have the capabilities to get to 70, 72, 73%. So that's going to add, I don't know what the exact numbers off the top of my head, we have to do the math, but there's certainly a lot of opportunity for growth. The biggest hindrance for us as a tourism industry over the years has been the ability to get to the destination, which has been the airport. So adding Southwest and adding the additional flights, there is certainly the desire by the airlines to add capacity into the destination. But there's a lot of barriers as you look at it, because the timing that the airlines want to come in, when you go to our airport during those peak timeframes, it's very, very difficult. So if I remember back to the original presentation, we're already under capacity as it stands today. So a good portion of phase 1 and 2, I think, just gets us up to where we need to be. And then phase 3 and 4 allows us to grow into the future for, the next 30, 40 years. So I think the math by Mead and Hunt and everybody else is sound on where we need to be for the long-term future. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Scott. David? Go ahead.
Yeah, I had the privilege of doing a tour of the airport today with Harry and Jeremy, and the timing was obviously pretty good. Interesting just to see this facility all behind the scenes and so forth. I think what it did for me was reaffirm, I'm in the 3 camp, I'll say that right now, but it just walking around this facility, seeing it firsthand, really reaffirmed for me, just that there's just so many limitations here, I feel like. I know what we've talked about, I know I've seen on paper, but just experiencing it firsthand, seeing the people standing around, trying to, get various places from curb, obviously looking at the baggage system, both inbound and outbound. Yeah, it reaffirmed to me that I just feel like this facility is going to have a tough time expanding if we're talking about 30, 40, 50 years down the road. So that's just my input. I think it'd be interesting for folks who have questions. I don't even know if it's possible, but take that opportunity to go walk around this place if you can.
David?
Let me just restate the timeline differences, because in the last presentation or the last meeting, it sounded like it was quite substantial, the difference in time that we would be implementing international border customs, as well as just gates going live, including wide body jet gates. And today it seems to get reduced to an 18-month difference. Can you just remind us of the time frame differences of the two plans?
Ryan, can you give it to us again? Because at our last meeting, it was 3.5 years to get phase 1 and 1A done. It was 6.5 years to get phase 1 done, number 3.
Yeah, 3.5 and 6 is what we've been using as kind of best case scenario to get to phase 1 in both alternatives. So 3.5 months to get to phase 1 of 1A, which is your Conrack, your 7 new gates, your FIS facility.
Okay.
6 years in alternative 3, best case scenario to build your entirely new head house, a Conrack, and 20 new gates.
Thank you. With that, David, do you have a comment or a thought?
I think I've spoken on that.
Margaret?
No, you think so?
You good? You good? Does anybody want to share their point of view with the rest of the group before we?
I had thought about 3, but based on what you said, Victoria had said earlier we could go for grants, but they're competitive. That's a problem. Private partnership, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The bottom line is now I don't know if we can really do 3. Because the money's not there. So I'm going back to 1A.
Anything else? Anyone online want to jump in? Going once, going twice? All right, just a couple of comments. The money is clearly an issue here. So that's something I think that is significant. How are we going to fund this thing? How are we going to finance the thing? The obstacles, Harry, that you've identified, it seems like they have solutions. I mean, there's going to be obstacles to either one of these things, but there are solutions. So for example, in phase 2 of 1A, when we go down to 15 gates, I think you said, Ryan, that there are a lot of creative ways, somewhat similar to what we're doing with the excess aircraft at the regional gate. We're walking people out to different things. It seems like there's a solution to that. Not pretty, certainly not happy in the middle of July, but there are ways of we're not going to be stuck with 15 gates. We're going to have opportunities to service more aircraft. So that phase 2 objection, 1A, it seems like we could be creative in that. It seems like a lot of the solutions here we could be creative. It's going to require this. And I think your point you made is that from the airline's perspective, I mean, just imagine if any of you walked through LaGuardia in the last 3 years. I mean, how they did that and created that airport while keeping it busy and keeping it active was amazing. And I assume that's the type of experience we would have, whether it's 1A or whether it's 3. We're going to work around a lot of things, trying to work on either one of these options. But I think the sensitivity I have tonight is more about the financial pieces of this. The fact that we can phase it out. If we add 7 gates, we get international in 3.5 years. I know Scott and tourism people have been saying that's a real priority for us. Yeah, we've got to move the USO. We got to figure out what to do with Signature. They're eventually going to cross the airport. But you know, that gets us international service in 3.5 years. I think that's huge. And if we were to hit some sort of wall and recession and these numbers don't happen, we could stop right there at phase 1. Where in option 3, you know, again, we're not a little pregnant here. We're going all the way to 2.8 billion, and we're going to still wind up with 20 gates in the first phase. I came into this thing right down the middle, like many of you did, but I'm thinking that our discussion tonight really, in terms of recommendations to City Council, the easiest way to go, the most financially, feasible way is probably 1A. And, you know, we'll present the pros and cons as we have to the commission tonight to City Council. If there's additional input from the airports or the airlines relative to these new constraints that we talked about tonight, we'll present that to City Council as well. But it feels like the feasibility of this project really leans towards 1A over 3. But let's stop there and let's see what everybody thinks. And if you are all ready, let's vote and see where the commission is on this.
So we're taking a vote on the airport master plan alternatives 1A or 3. So your response will be 1A or 3. Commissioner Banks.
3.
Merriman.
1A.
Burke.
1A.
Caldwell.
1A.
Corcoran.
1A.
Dada.
1A conditionally is how we send a message to our customer, and the signage and the experience will be critical and crucial.
Feltman.
1A.
Fong.
3.
Hughes.
1A.
Martin.
1A.
Michaelis.
1A.
Hart.
3.
Pye.
1A.
Wise.
1A.
Wiseman.
3.
Young.
1A.
We have a majority for 1A.
All right. Thank you all for this. Thank you, staff, for all the work that's gone into this. Thank you, Ryan and team, for your thanks.
We will need to do a vote to recommend to the city council 1A.
Okay, so we're gonna do it again. Is that right?
Yeah, so what we were doing is we were confirming we had a majority to vote on.
Okay.
So now we will do a vote to recommend 1A.
Okay. And just tell us what the numbers were, if you have.
Yes. So it was 12 for 1A to 4 for 3.
Sounds good. All right, so we need to do this again?
Yes.
This
So-
is to recommend to city council that we proceed with 1A.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Seconded.
Go ahead.
Sorry, who was the second?
Jake Long.
Thank you. So the response is yes, no, or abstain. Banks?
Yeah.
Merriman?
Yes.
Burke?
Yes.
Caldwell?
Yes.
Corcoran?
Yes.
Dada?
Yes.
Feltman?
Yes.
Fong?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Michaelis?
Yes.
Park?
No.
Pye?
Yes.
Wise?
Yes.
Wiseman?
No.
Young?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion
Christina?
passes.
Christina,
Yes.
you skip me?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Hughes?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you all. So next steps, this goes to city council and then our subgroup continues to work. Can you give us a sense, Jeremy or Ryan, of what will happen next in terms of the commission's contribution to this process?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We have 2 more meetings scheduled of the working group, primarily to focus on airfield master planning, as well as there's some landside developable property, as well as where Signature gets relocated to, some other alternatives that we're working through. So that's the next step with the working group. Then this all gets packaged together, the airfield recommendations, the landside recommendations, and the terminal recommendations into one comprehensive master plan concept. There is scheduled to be another public open house at that point, likely March or April of 2024. And at that point, we put it all the recommendations on the ALP and submit this to the FAA for their review.
So our commitment is.
So,
Go ahead.
so sorry, the last, as in terms of a city council decision, we simply need an adoption of the comprehensive master plan to submit to the FAA, probably in April.
So our commitment is we'll keep the full commission aware of what's happening in the subgroup and we'll have ongoing updates as we go, and we'll see where city council lands on this. I think it's January 15th in their next session.
Okay, January 20th.
January 20th?
25th.
25th. Okay. All right, can we move forward? Financial summary.
So, the financial summary is in the packet. To keep things short, I am just gonna ask if anybody has any questions in regards to the financial summary. Overall, you will see some changes to it. I did some reorganizing, regrouping. I moved some of the charts onto their own pages. I also removed the, one of the fiscal years. So Commissioner Martin and I met, we had some discussions, and, Commissioner Martin made some recommendations on some improvements to it. So, I went ahead and added those onto there. If there's any questions about anything, please let me know, but the airport is in a good financial position. We do intend to, take a look again, of course, next month, once we get, halfway through the year. And, just, if you're looking at the budget and you're looking at the actual, just keep in mind that we are seasonal. So, we're gonna start seeing a lot of our, revenues, show up over the next few months and even start tapering off in May. So you're gonna see the most of our revenues happen in May. And then maybe even most of our expenses happen because we're gonna be doing, a lot more operational needs to keep up with all of the passengers that are coming in through the airport. So, does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Victoria? Excellent. Hey, just a heads up that, thank you, Commissioner Martin, for stepping up. Tracy's going to be the head of the budget subcommittee and has already been connected to Victoria. So thank you for that, and look forward to your leadership on budget. Marketing.
Hey. All right, everybody. So again, apologies for the snafu and getting the announcement of Auto Clean today out to you guys. The search event for to go last night. I hit send, shut my laptop to go home. Woke up this morning, all of a sudden it just sent. I'm like, wait, why did that not send last night? So again, I've been to you guys a full many hours of advance notice, so apologies on that. So going into our marketing. Oh, also the gift bags on the table in front of you guys. We have a little Christmas gift, a little PSP branded coffee mug for each of you to take home with you. The commissioners who are not here, we'll try and get that over to you. If you want to swing by, just hit me up. We'll get that to you. We can, I don't know if we can mail it or not. But anyhow, moving on. All right, and I've got my presentation up on the screen for anybody that needs to look at it. It's not in your packet. Why is it not moving forward? Hold on one second. There we go. I'll try this one. Oops. Sorry.
I'm gonna try to, log on and we'll on my screen.
Oh, there it is. Okay, all right, working. Okay, so first one up is our scheduled departing seats. We have, we're still scheduled to be down 5.8% in January and 3.4% in February. If you remember from previous presentations, I said the airlines were still doing a bit of adjustment from their overcapacity that they added the year before. However, you look starting in March, we're up 2.9%, April up 0.2%, and significantly up in May at 10.5%, which is great news for us. Looking at our passenger counts, we have October came in at 259,808 total passengers, which was up 5% over 2022. October's up 2.6% over 2022, and I forgot to put the total number in there, so apologies for that. But we were up, which is a nice change of pace compared to the summer. We had 4 months, we were actually down somewhere between 2 to 4%, depending on the month. And so we're looking on the positive now. Another great thing to note is that when December numbers come in, even if they come in underneath December of last year, this will still close out as a record year for us. So it's not drastically below December last year. If we come in anywhere near where we had last year, 2023 will be another record year for us, which is great news. We had Delta return their seasonal nonstop service to Atlanta this month, just a couple of days ago on December 18th. And that's a question on that. So next, any questions on those two slides I just presented already?
What time does the Alaska New York flight come and go?
It leaves approximately 1:30 to 2 p.m. in the afternoon to go to New York, and it lands here around 12:30 or so.
Nice.
Midday, yeah.
How's it doing?
As far as well, it's too early to tell, really, because just now started going, but I haven't heard any complaints so far. Last when we spoke to them last, seemed to be pleased with our performance of the market, so. Good right now. Okay, so you guys saw earlier today, we announced a historic naming rights partnership with the Agua Caliente Casinos. Is a 3-year deal, a total of $1.433 million for the term of 3 years. 57% of that goes to Palms to the airport. 43% to Fuse. Now, these percentages are based on the terms of our contract with Fuse that was approved by City Council in May and then by the City Commission in April 2023. That contract, when it came through, was for advertising, sponsorships, and naming rights. So it gives Fuse the right to sell all of those different avenues on our behalf, those opportunities. But the airport still retains the final say on all advertising, sponsorships, and naming rights agreements and designs. Fuse portion of that, and I also want to note that before Fuse came in, we had another vendor doing advertising concessions for the airport, and our portion at that time was only 50%, up to 800,000 gross, 55% above $800,000 gross on that one. So we do have a better financial deal with Fuse than we did with our previous vendor. One thing I'll note too is that we went to RFP on this one to find a new partner for advertising concessions. We went out, we wanted somebody who's innovative and out of the box, not just for our airport, but also for the airport industry. Our airport stated we were looking for a company to bring new innovative ideas for advertising concessions program. And I think with this, Fuse is definitely delivering on that. So we're on some more details on the new partnership. So again, the 3-year deal that includes naming rights to the RJ Concourse, which changes the name to Agua Caliente Concourse. It also comes with traditional internal advertising such as baggage claim ads and interior of 2 jet bridges. New advertising locations inside the concourse will be wrapping 2 of the 6 columns. An activation space inside the concourse. They are doing some designs on that, but those are in progress. And I also have some photos of their inspiration boards for that activation space in the coming slides. And the area is going to be a 10-foot by 30-foot rectangle in the center area of the RJ Concourse, or now Agua Caliente Concourse, towards the front entry of it. I also want to note that the original proposed name was Agua Caliente Casinos Concourse and included exterior jet bridge advertising, but after discussions with Kevin and some other commissioners, we negotiated with them to not do exterior of the jet bridges and also just simply call it Agua Caliente Concourse instead. So the activation space, for those of you who may not be familiar, in marketing, an activation space is meant to create an immersive experience to represent a brand. So Agua Caliente Casinos will create a space that provides a passenger experience enhancements along with representing the brand. The activation space is in the design phase, and the airport will have final approval on the concept and/or provide instruction for any changes. The following slides are proposed concept idea. I kind of call them their inspiration boards, if you want to use that term. And the airport, we've also already given some direction to go with more of a Palm Springs style versus a Vegas casino kind of style. So this is what they presented to Fuse, present to us. So if you're looking at this one, you'll see the center concourse area, you have that sign is right there in the middle. About this area here is where the activation space will be. It will stop right about where these 2 columns, those 2 interior columns are, and the back half of it will still be available. Where there's 2, the flight information displays are on these columns. Those are the columns they will wrap with their advertising. They're also proposing to do some sort of, again, it's a proposal, an idea, to do some sort of water projections onto the ceiling area of the concourse in the nighttime hours. Have some sort of agua neon or other signage on the far facial, where that number 2 is in the distance. And then also, as I mentioned already, they'll do wraps on the 2 columns right here on the sides. So the passenger enhancements we're going to do, if you look at the top right, they want to do seating in the areas, additional nice seating that's colorful, has additional tables for everybody. They also want to do charging stations if the power needs of the RJ will allow for it. So the RJ is kind of limited to how much bandwidth for electricity we have, depending on the kitchen for the restaurants and other power needs of the facility. If there's enough power bandwidth or at least left over, they plan to put in additional charging stations as a passenger amenity to go with it as well. Now this area. They also want to do like decorative arch features The Auburn College logo and a palette that outlines the decorative 2D palms and maybe some gaming iconography, sorry. Seating area, lounge, and that lounge furniture that mimics the organic water form of their arch is gonna be with their logo. And then also floor treatments, they would do vivid foliage collage, cobblestone path in between pieces of the furniture. This gives us some of their inspirations, what they're looking for. They also have some other options for signage. One on the far left being kind of a tunnel signage walking through with their branding. Option 2 in the middle, or a divider or a flat interactive signage wall. Or on 3, a little bit more innovative, where they're more like light cubes or some sort of shapes that could operate as tables for the furniture arraignments or function as a base for their palm trees they plan to put into the area. This is the last slide on it, is some of their gaming related concepts. They talk about doing a roulette wheel charging table, poker chip side tables. The slot machine would be repurposed with a plasma display for messaging. They also need on chandelier. This is the one where he said it's feeling a bit too Vegas and not really representative of our destination or the brand of our destination. So we asked them to pull back on that a little bit and go back to the drawing board and represent so that that's more reflective of Palm Springs and the greater Coachella that our destination is. And that would be the end of that. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
The gaming question. I didn't quite feel right with me. And I don't know how much of a push that would be from Agro Valley.
When you say gaming portion, you actually having gaming or just the gaming decor?
Maybe I heard it wrong. They're not talking about slot machines.
No. There's not going to be any type of gaming put into this facility.
Okay, that's on the record.
Yes, yeah. As far as I don't know if we even legally can allow it here, so. But anyway, and I don't know if that's ever gonna, I don't know if it's allowed or not, but as part of this deal, we have gaming like slot machine, this stuff is not part of this deal.
Okay. Why you guys smiling here?
David, yes.
So, on the Fuse, contract process, you use a third-party consultant, if I remember correctly, to negotiate the deal, to do the RFP and all that?
So the deal, the RFP, we wrote that together with our procurement, the city procurement, and that was put on the streets for 30 days. And then we had many other companies write proposals to us. We didn't have a consultant write the RFP with us, but there was an airport consultant that helped us in the review process of just looking at the proposals.
Great. Can we get some benchmark data so we're better informed on these types of arrangements, contracts with third parties for advertising, procurement, so we can see what other airports comparable and other sizes pay in terms of their fees, because
the revenue split?
Yeah, and all that. Because
Yeah, we can do that.
Benchmarking information out there.
Yeah, so in advertising, typically most airports get anywhere between 50 to 60% of their revenue split. We're at 57%, so we're on the upper end of that. There are airports that get 100%. They bring that fully in-house and have their own staff and have salaries and all that stuff to pay for it. That's an option we could explore down the road if we want to add staff up for it. But yeah, I can see what we can do. I can actually ask our companies if they have an informal poll or if they have any information on it, what the other airports have on it. But I know the advertising portion is for sure. The naming rights and sponsorship, that's unique. We're, from the research we've seen, the first airport to announce a deal like this. So percentages of what would be airport standard may not really exist. We may be setting the standard for it. That'd be something we might be able to change, down the road if we want to, at the end of the 3 years, with Fuse at least. Yeah, so we had on the request on the RFP, when we did the RFP, we had 3 companies respond. One of them offered, I think it was 55%, 57% was Fuse. Another company offered 60%, but the way they had their structure, Fuse, they actually ended up being less revenue to the airport because they wanted the airport to fund the capital improvement investment, where Fuse is self-funding the capital improvement investment for all the changes in the baggage claim, all digital screens. They're actually spending about $400,000 re-outfitting the advertising pictures of the airport. So the company that put in the 60% wanted us to pay for this. So in the end, it was a better deal to go with the 57% for finding the revenue side for us. But yeah, I know we can go, let's see, I can get some peer airports like Victoria did the CPE and kind of see what they're doing.
Like questions or comments about this?
Just from my end up here, I would say just be careful of the walking paths to get to the seating areas in their activation space, that they're not kind of blocking it. And I don't know if you might need to just also keep in mind visibility to the gate numbers, that people can see their gate and destination.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely told them that. We also, as a public facility, it needs to meet ADA requirements, all the different things like that. So they're well aware of that. And we'll be able to review all that, make sure that sight lines are there, people can navigate to where they need to go to properly.
So what can the commission and commissioners expect in terms of being informed about different activations and different suggestions? And what input would you expect the commissioners to have on any of this?
Well, so this is actually pretty new, obviously, when we first airports to do it. So I think when design comes in, I'm open to input and thoughts and ideas on it. You know, I mean, we're representing this airport for the entire valley. You guys represent the entire valley. So I think having some review on some of the things is probably important, you know. I mean, what, do you guys have ideas or?
I don't know if people have individual ideas, but they certainly.
Maybe run it through marketing committee?
Could start there. Certainly the commission needs to see this and make sure that the commission is comfortable with all this.
And I agree. I do believe as this project unfolds, these will be clearly top agenda items for the marketing committee.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm happy to do that. I think that'd be great to have that, to have some additional feedback and different viewpoints for people, even people outside of that aren't normally working within the airport, there's users of the airport, see what is their thoughts on this. We also expect this deal to maybe bring in some other entity one approaches, but other ideas maybe we haven't thought about yet, maybe other kinds of activation spaces or whatever. You kind of feel like it's almost like you introduce something new, and then other people come out of the woodwork thinking, oh, I have this idea, what about that idea? So I'm kind of excited to see what other things may come, you know, down the pipeline that we might be able to check out, other opportunities.
What's the implementation timeline?
So we're hoping to have a grand opening, ribbon cutting in the spring, hopefully March, April-ish timeframe. That's going to depend on, we have a permitting process to go through to put the Agua Caliente Concourse logo on the exterior of the building. That is already, the process has begun on that one to get at least on the agenda for the committee to review. Once the fabrication is done with that and the activation space, they're hoping to do ribbon cutting in the spring. But with exact month and date haven't quite been set yet.
Can we expect that all those details will be presented at the commission at a time?
Absolutely.
All right, any other comments about this? Let's proceed. Concessions updates.
All right, I'll try to give you a quick update here on kind of what's going on with the facility here. You have the projected opening dates in your packet. Really, not much has changed from last month to this month in terms of projected opening dates. Although we are, making some nice headway. I think yesterday we started the barricade wall up in the Bono. Another additional barricade wall that will have some really nice graphics on it, showing customers kind of what's coming. So that started to go. We're starting to construct the laydown area for the construction. Both vendors have inked in their contractors. So we're making some progress there. And majority of the construction really is going to start here the second week of January in full tilt. From Cactus to Cloud, down there, so Uptown Essentials to Los Palmas Oasis and Hey Joshua, all kicking off and getting going.
Contractors.
So yes, so it's and that has been some of the delay. They just like I reported last time, they were really struggling finding contractors. And
Is city planning been supportive in terms of permitting and fast tracking those?
As much as possible, yeah. There still has been some hiccups along the way in planning, but after talking with our airport planner, and she's used to working at other cities, we're going at light speed. So usually these things take 6 months to a year, and there's thousands of permits sitting down at the city. So we're at the head of the line and trying to go as quickly as we can.
Any updates on the Elmira Sol space? I'm not sure if everyone heard, or maybe you just want to give us an update and tell the commission what's going on.
I'll go ahead and do the update on that. So Parodies came forth to us and advised us that their deal with Elmira Sol that was supposed to be in one of the spaces actually down here, that they have pulled out of the deal. And so Parodies is currently working with 2 other local brands to see about having one of them come into the airport. So they're currently in discussions with them, and they're progressively working through the design elements and the business terms, and they hope to have something lined up by the first week of January.
Victoria, I'm sorry, Victoria, are we looking to keep the same type of food, Mexican, if it's Elmira Sol?
Absolutely. So we absolutely need to keep the Mexican cuisine, and it's mostly because of the constraints of the current kitchen that's in place there. So we're not able to make any expansions to it at all. It has to stay the same cuisine because of the kitchen constraints. So you will be seeing some other type of Mexican cuisine come in place there.
And Victoria, I don't know if you can see the chat. Scott White has asked in the chat if we can add more temporary options, especially for coffee in the morning.
We can definitely talk with Heritage and Marshall Retail Group about that. So yeah.
We're getting a lot of negative feedback about the length of lines, and especially around coffee in the morning and the availability of kind of grab and go. So I'd love to get an update from Parodies to see if in this transition, they can try to improve some of that, because we're getting feedback from all different folks about this and high level of dissatisfaction.
Yeah, well, go ahead. I was just gonna say, remember, we've added Half Moon Empanadas has coffee. We still have coffee to go in the quick serve out of Santa Rosa.
Then why do we have these big lines?
We have coffee at PSP. We
I
have
tell
coffee.
people the same thing, but why
I
are
don't
we still
know.
having these?
I don't know if they just are not binding. We have signs up. Daniel has added signs of what's open. So maybe we need to do a little bit more outreach there, because we have 4 places right now that you can get coffee.
And they're open like 6 a.m.?
Some open at 4:30.
Yeah.
Depending where they are. I actually was unaware that Half Moon had coffee.
Yes,
So we can review our signs so we can change things that way. We put a sign by the coffee shop saying alternate locations to get that.
Right, and then when we're all said and done, we're actually even have more locations with coffee, right? Because we'll have the Mexican restaurant will have coffee, Coachella Valley Coffee. So that'll have 1 more, yeah, so.
And Jeremy, I'm sorry, I didn't hear earlier. Did you say there is something currently temporarily in the RJ Concourse?
That's correct. Right in front of the 9 Cities, construction zone, there's a coffee station there.
So not necessarily proud of the fact, but I've just recently done my mileage run. I have made 9 trips out of PSP in the last 6 weeks. All of them have been the 8 a.m. departure on United. And not one time has that area in front of, in front of 9 Cities been available.
Yeah, and I know that as well, and we're working with Parodies. They've had some challenges with staffing and people calling out, and they tend to move their people around to the locations, alternate locations. So they are having some challenges with that, and we're working with them to make sure they have people there.
Yeah, I think that's what's obviously adding to the lines that we're seeing elsewhere.
I think one other factor might be just espresso drinks. I don't know if all the places offer espresso drinks, but I'm guessing maybe PSP Coffee is the only one, or maybe there's one other. But
I believe 2 of the locations offer espresso drinks. The other 2 is just regular drip coffee.
Yeah, so that'll definitely impact the lines there.
Okay, any other questions, type concessions? Glad that it's moving along, that's good. All right, projects, airport capital improvement programs, any updates?
I don't have any updates, per se, but I will, touch base with the operations committee at some point in the new year. We have made progress on the FIS study. InterVistas, completing that study, has provided their first update to the airport on some market data, so we will be meeting with the operations committee on that.
Questions? David, are you okay? Operations?
Yeah, I have a question. On the Wi-Fi project, last time we talked about it, it was waiting for the fellow in City Hall to agree. Where are we with him now?
Sure. Yeah, we can check this one. Okay. So I met with the IT director and with the city manager about this last week. And we were finally able to get a PO issued to purchase the equipment for Wi-Fi. So we basically have to purchase all new ports. They are on the way. I'm not sure the lead time. Jeremy might have more information on that, but that is in the works and it's pretty imminent.
Yes, what he said. Yes, they're expecting it to be probably end of January by the time they get the equipment. They have controllers, new controllers to, be able to, we're going from a very low number of wireless access points to, I think, 80. I think they're purchasing 80, which they've done a heat map survey of everything, and they're going to be really focusing on Bono and the RJ first, getting those really dialed in, and then they'll move to the rest of the terminals. But in addition to that, they're also trying to get quotes from some wiring vendors because our IT department can't be installing all of these. So they're currently trying to do that while they're waiting for the equipment to come. So hopefully when the equipment arrives, they have a vendor ready to roll to start doing all the wiring.
So we could move that third quarter 24 to second quarter? Is that even possible? Ooh, 6 months would be great.
We're trying, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. They have all frequent travelers. Thank you. Let's get this fixed. All right, anything else? Executive Director report.
That is also printed in your packet, and I have nothing to add. However, if you have questions about it, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Any questions on Harry's report? Okay. Commissioner comments? I do have one. Please, Bob.
Yeah, Bob Berryman here. We had through the city of Indian Wells, we had a resident inquiry regarding signage at the right here at curbside. And the question was, is it still accurate and is it still relevant? And the signage reads, unlike cab and limo drivers, ride-sharing drivers are not subject to drug and alcohol testing. I'm gonna leave it at that and maybe talk to staff. And the question is it accurate and is it relevant still?
It is not accurate. It is not relevant. We are working on that. That's actually an ordinance that needs to be repealed.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Harry, the last part, you're looking at it again?
No, we're working on drafting a new ordinance so that city council can repeal that so we can put that signage.
Any questions on city council activities or actions? The airport reports are included in the packet. Future committee meetings. Anything planned for future subcommittee meetings at this point?
So we'll be scheduling that operations committee meeting. So we'll be talking.
So I think till February, I'm sure Jeremy will be happy about that.
Yep, and as noted earlier, we'll be scheduling a marketing committee meeting as we start to roll out the new deal announced today.
All right, good. And Tracy will talk about what's the right timing for the budget committee to reconvene as well.
Sounds good.
All right, is there anything else we need to discuss?
Airport's busy.
The airport is busy.
We're fighting over apartments.
There you go. I just did take this opportunity not only to wish everybody happy holidays, but also to thank you all for the time and effort, especially around this master plan. There were really, really good discussions. I don't know about you, but when people ask me questions, because lots of people in town have seen it, we've just become a lot smarter about how to talk about it. And that really is a result of everybody's input and the staff's response. So thank you very much for the support of this. We'll see what City Council thinks. And look forward to an exciting 2024 with new Wi-Fi and concessions. Oh my God, I can't stand it. All sorts of good stuff coming. So thank you all. Can we have a motion to wrap up? We don't need it anymore.
No, we don't.
We don't. We're done. Happy New Year. Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy
everyone.
holidays. Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Thank you, Scott.
Happy holidays.